Are we inadvertently sticking students outside of a learning paywall? If you're still using pricey textbooks, there are other options, and open educational resources are one of them. We'll break it down in episode 127 of the DIESOL podcast.
Welcome to the DIESOL podcast, where we focus on developing innovation in English as a second or other language. I'm Brent Warner, professor of ESL at Irvine Valley College, and as always, I'm here with the wonderful Michelle Reyes, award-winning educator in innovation and professional development, specializing in teacher training with an ed tech focus. Michelle, how are you?
I'm pretty good, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the
We're here.
we might have to go back to the what are you doing these days question. What are you up to?
Yeah. What are you doing? How are you creating?
How are you creating?
What are you creating?
Are you getting your runs in these days?
Yeah, and I've actually lengthened my my goals. So now I'm trying to okay, this is a crazy goal, but since we're talking about it, 10-minute plank. I've reached 3-minute plank.
Oh, okay. 10-minute planks,
It's
that's a thing.
it's about it's a mental challenge, not the physical challenge. I
Wow.
mean, more for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're
I that
creating
would
things.
that would be the physical challenge too. Yes, I am creating an OER for my class. I think we mentioned it briefly on a previous show, but today we figured we'd dig in a little bit to it, kind of see what's going on. It's a little bit in my mind, it feels like it hasn't been developed as much as it could be for ESL, and so we're going to be talking about open educational resources and the OER world a bit and what I'm doing with it. So let's jump
Let's
in.
let's All right. So you've already given us the term OER, but I don't think I'd heard it before. So
Hmm.
tell us more. What is an OER? And
Yeah, so open educational resource is the idea that, people in the field are already experts on the content knowledge, and that we don't necessarily need to have books provided to us by major publishers and to students by major publishers. A lot of
mhm,
teachers have created their own materials and kind of enough materials for students to get through without necessarily having to buy a book. And this has been around for a long, long time.
mm,
And so it's like, can we provide those same materials to students, or perhaps even better materials than what they're getting from the traditional textbook? And so the goal with an OER is to create a high quality, and the open part is really important, a high quality resource that is open to everybody, meaning that anyone
mhm,
out there could take it. They could say, hey, I like this. I'm going to remix it. I'm going to update some of the content to match my needs and my students' needs, but I'm going to use this as a fundamental. And then I'm going to, you know, share it out with my own students again, well, with not charging them for it. And so
mm,
the idea here has existed for a long time. It's grown quite a bit with like the digital age and all of these kinds of
mhm.
things, because it's much easier to distribute and share content digitally than it was to say like, hey, I've got this book that anybody can use for. It couldn't have been free with the paper versions completely, because
Right.
there's a physical material cost.
Mhm.
But the idea now is how do we provide good resources to our students that doesn't cost them money to get through? Because as you know, so many of these books cost so much money
Right.
for students.
Right. So you're talking about sharing sources and that
Mhm.
can get tricky. So where do you find these sources?
Yeah, so there are lots of repositories online. The biggest problem, I think, with OER is that
Mm-hmm.
they're not very well centered, like they're not consolidated. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can go around to all of these different places. So there are places like I'm using LibreText, LibreTexts,
Hmm.
but there are other ones like OER Commons. Some people here might have heard of OpenStax.
Hmm.
There's a company called Pressbooks. Anyways, all of these different organizations or groups are out there, and then you kind of have to go online and search to find them and piecemeal together what you're looking for in order to make it work. And so you do have to give credit, of course, just like we do as scholars, right? Saying, hey, this
Hmm.
came from this
Right.
person or whatever else it is. But some of these are really well built. So for
And
example, I found a couple of ones that I really liked on LibreText, and then I'm taking them and I'm redoing them in ways that work for me and for my students. And so it might just be that the content's already there. Someone built out this grammar, grammar chapters and all these different things. And I'm like, I really like how they presented it, but I want to change parts of it. And so, yes, there are many, many places out there, but it is not centralized.
so you're saying that these materials are things you can or artifacts that you can edit and then like I guess you're making it your own
Yeah,
as long
yes.
as you're giving credit to the original source and someone's just made it available because they don't need to make money out of it.
That's right. Yeah, so it's like so the idea here is so a lot of people have heard of the Creative Commons license, I
Right.
think. So it's like, hey, you can use this, you can remix it, or you have to give credit for it, or no credit necessary. There's all these different levels that are kind of different than copyright. They're much more about sharing and making things available to other people. And so there's a big movement around Creative Commons. I am not going to be able to get into the depth of like every
Mm-hmm.
single, like this type of licenses for this and this type of licenses for that. But again, you can go get a lot of good materials out there for free, and then use those as your starting point. As long as the original person said, "Hey, this is meant to be an open educational resource or a Creative Commons at some level," then you can take it, you can use it, and mix it up in the way that you want to use.
So taking it back to our classes, you've worked on a couple maybe, or you already have one done, and which subject or what topics have you started
Yeah.
diving into and what has that entailed?
So I'm doing mine for a grammar class that I'm teaching. It's new to me. I haven't taught this class before, but I've kind of always wanted to teach it. I do love the grammar classes, even they're just kind of old fashioned and nerdy, but I like getting into it. And so I was like, okay, well, we have this grammar books out there and they're good, they're fine, but also like they cost students a lot of money and whatever else it is. So I said, hey, what if I build an OER, especially now today where students I could also build some AI interactive bots for them to like practice the ideas on. I just thought it was like a really good opportunity and a time. And so what I'm doing is I'm building this OER as I'm going through the class with my students and kind of seeing what they're responding to, what's useful for them, what's not. But it's all grammar stuff, right? So right
Mhm.
now we're doing lots of verb tense things, kind of continuing on with that. We'll be doing active and passive voice,
Mhm.
you know, uh, verbs with two object, like all these different different
Mhm.
ideas inside of here that are just basic grammar things, but trying to present them in ways that are interesting to my students. And so, like I said, I'm going through that. I'm building it as we go, and I am using AI to help me with the
Mhm.
process.
Okay.
I'll talk about that in a little bit, but kind of because I'm trying to share relevant materials or things that might be interesting to the students that are different from what traditional textbooks always talk about, or at least somewhat different. And so, what I'm trying to do, and this is something that's really nice about doing this as you're building, is I'm
Mhm.
actually trying to customize a lot of the conversation around. Southern California and Orange County culture,
Mhm.
history,
Mhm.
celebrities, movers and
Mhm.
shakers, like all those kinds of things, so that
Mhm.
people kind of get a feel. My students in particular kind of get a feel and learn a little bit about the history of the area where they live now,
Mhm.
and what has come out of Orange County, California.
That is pretty cool. So does this mean that you're not using a traditional textbook, or
Yeah.
is that right now? Okay, so you've done with away with the textbook.
Yeah, completely gone.
That is
So,
so cool.
yeah, so they're not paying anything for it.
Mm-hmm.
There are some problems. We'll talk about this in a little bit. But basically everything gets uploaded online. If the students want to click a button, they could download a PDF of it as we're going through things. So if they wanted to print things out, they could. But everything for us, since we use Canvas, is
Mm-hmm.
all uploaded directly into Canvas for them.
Very cool. So, all right, let's go ahead and discuss some of the problems with doing an OER because it sounds like um you spent some time
Yeah.
putting this
Uh,
together.
so one, if you are like me and like you see something and then you're like, it's not quite good enough. It's not quite good enough. Then it starts taking some real time. So essentially it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I like these materials, but then I get into like my own design
Gotta have the
issues.
Brent flavor. I
Yeah,
get it.
you
I
know,
get it.
it's like
Totally get it.
I want it to look good, right? I actually posted
Right.
about this recently, how
Mm-hmm.
important I actually did a post for TESOL recently about how important good design is and like why it
Oh yeah.
matters. And so because students nowadays they really have an expectation of high quality design
Oh
in
yeah.
all things that they interact with, right? And so there are a lot of teachers out there that are still handing out like, you know, Microsoft Word
Photocopies of
documents,
photocopy.
photocopies of PDFs of whatever, and it's like super blurry and like,
Ah.
and it's not, it was laid out on a typewriter however many years ago, right? As compared to what really students have high expectations. Basically, if you go look at like Apple design, go to the Apple website or, buy an Apple product or whatever else it is, like that is kind of the standard that students are expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want things
Mm-hmm.
to look good and clear. And so anyways, one thing that I did find is that you can use AI, especially with the program that I'm using. I'm using LibreText, so it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
HTML based. And so I
Mm.
can use AI to say, hey, here's all the content that I'm working with. Make this look really good in an HTML layout and, and break it down into these sections. And so then I can just copy that HTML and pop it right in. And so now it looks like a really clean. I'm also kind of trying to brand it with my own school colors because it's going in for
Mm-hmm.
my school. So it's like all of these little bits here that are just like nice touches that kind of add to the level of professionalism. And, students look at that and they're like, oh, okay, hold on a second. This is high quality, so I can work with this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that part does take some time. And, it certainly is taking me a lot more time than it would be just to say, go buy a book and we're going to work with that. But over time, I can keep on rebuilding this and fixing it and making it work.
Very,
One other
very cool.
problem that I've had is implementing activities themselves, right? So when we have a paper book and it's like, hey, here's how you use modals, and then immediately on the page is like, here's 15 questions where you can practice using the modals. Okay, great. On digital form, that is much harder, right? And so when it's
Mm.
uploaded into an LMS, you can of course make a second page that maybe has like, I could use like the quiz feature inside of the
Mm-hmm.
LMS as part of them, but also like I am a believer, as much as we talk about technology, I am a believer in the value of like handwriting things.
Right.
And so then we're like, okay, well, you've got this digital thing, and then on another piece of paper, you're going to write out the answers to these questions. So, like, I haven't found something that makes me totally satisfied in the quality of students being able to get the access to the information and then immediately start working on it, unless I've done some things where I've printed out handouts for the students to practice. I've done some things where I say do it online, and I haven't totally found a very smooth system that I like.
I see. So, what, how do you find the students? I guess, how are they reacting to Are they expecting a textbook? Are some of them asking, why aren't we? Because I've had students who want a textbook. And
uh
so,
Yeah, they have this is my first semester doing it, and this class was mostly just happy that they didn't have to buy a book.
oh, hey, that's a
That
win.
yeah, so it was like that was the first conversation with them, is like, you don't have to buy anything. You can just come into the class and I'm providing everything for you. And so they were
Yeah.
pretty happy about that. I think there are some interaction options that are a little bit tricky. One of the things that I made a mistake on was uh exporting all of these things to PDF, and then I was uploading the PDFs into our LMS. And I learned recently that you don't need to do that. Because the problem that happened is when they scroll through the PDFs in Canvas, it's like multi-page, right? And sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
splits it up in the middle of, in the middle of a table that's explaining an idea, and so that doesn't look very good. It's hard to,
Right.
and so what you can do, and what I didn't know that you can do, is at least with LibreText, which is what I'm using, is you can upload the entire HTML, so it's just a smooth interactive experience, or
Well.
semi-interactive experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they are. So I have made my own few mistakes inside of that. Now I'm recognizing, hey, I want to do this. I should point out though, we've got other faculty on campus, and especially in the ESL department. Some of them are like, no, we don't want. We were building OERs, but we don't want them to be all digital. We still want them to be printable. So they're doing
Mm-hmm.
everything in Microsoft Word, which is something that you can do, right? It doesn't have to be built into one of these systems. It can just be, hey, we've got just paper, and we can print this out for all of our students that might not be tech savvy or know how to get on computers. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can implement these things.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
All right, so we are coming up on the TESOL virtual convention. Michelle, are you aware of the dates? I'm putting you on the spot of the virtual convention.
I'm not. I have actually like mostly left social media.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm just
a
taking a
little tricky
break.
these days. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basic,
But we have
yeah,
you, so let us
I,
know.
I do. I do. I know when it is. Friday and Saturday, November 21st and 22nd. They're also doing 2 days, like a pre-day and a post-day. So on 20th, they're doing a graduate student forum, and on the Sunday, they're doing a pre-K-12 day, which is kind of
Mhm.
cool because a lot of, I think, TESOL, we've talked about this in the past, but like
Yeah.
TESOL and Cut TESOL and all these groups like tend to have so many teachers who are kind of higher ed or adult ed, and not as much focus on the K-12 world. And so I'm glad that they have something going on for that. But regardless, if you're interested in going, I have been given a discount code for anybody who's planning on going, 20% off. And so if you want to go, and if you're planning on going, the code you can use, and we'll leave it in the show notes as well, is BWVC 2025. Um,
Set us in Brent Warner.
I thought it was uh, be well, very cool. I guess that's right. Maybe it is Brent Warner Virtual Convention. Okay. But anyways, so BWVC 2025, if you want 20% off for the TESOL Virtual Convention, you can plan ahead now because that's in November.
All right. So if I wanted to get started on an OER, because I eventually probably will want to do the same, where do I even start? You mentioned a few resources already that are out there.
Yeah. So the one that I'm using is LibreText, LibreText.org. If you're at a school or if you reach out to them, you can kind of you can go onto the website, and there's tons and tons of stuff. The only thing that I would say, just to be aware of, is that it kind of started off in the sciences, right? So a lot of the science professors started building these things early. And so while there are quite a lot of ESL ones or language learning ones, you still kind of have to do some searching to find what's going to match with your needs. One of the things that is important when you're building an OER is to build a plan for an outline so that you know what you're actually trying to take and plug in from out there in the world. So, anyways, you can start with LibreText. That's kind of where I've started. A lot of other people start with the OER Commons or OpenStacks. We'll
Mm-hmm.
have links to all of these in the show notes. And then there's one other one. There's actually quite a lot of other ones, but one that's called Pressbooks. And so going back to the conversation of design, this one definitely has the best beautiful design for it, like being able to design things and make them look
Mm-hmm.
very good. But it's also very much a for-profit model.
Okay.
Which
So
kind
are
of
you
seems to
paying?
go, well, yeah. So the schools or the individual has to pay to kind of get access to and build it, and so it's like kind of goes against the spirit in some ways
Mm,
of the OER thing, where it's like, oh, we see that there's this thing where people are trying to provide free things for everybody, and we'll just
mhm,
charge them for it. It's like, well, okay, it's a little bit tricky, but at the same time, much better looking. Good visual integrations and those kinds of things. So you can take a look around. You can see, like I said, get started with some of those places,
mhm,
and then if you are at a school and you have a librarian, you could also talk to them about it. We happen to be lucky enough at my school to have a specific OER librarian. This is like
mm.
her whole specialty. So I've
That is
learned,
so cool.
yeah, it's great. We've learned quite a bit about it, and it's very much about like how to help the students and support
Mhm,
them through the processes and everything. But start the process there, I guess, and see where it goes.
so talking about being able to put it on an LMS, what other, like, what is the way that you integrate it with your class, or how do you disseminate it?
Yeah, so like I said, mine is an LMS
Mm-hmm.
embeds,
And that's Canvas, you said,
it's in
right? You're in
Canvas, but it
Canvas.
does work for most LMSs. Like, so if you're on Blackboard or what's that one, Bright Space, or all these different ones. So whichever one you're on, they kind of have buttons that you can click to do an export
Mm-hmm.
and an import type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then inside of there, every page also has like a download as a PDF thing. So the students,
Mm-hmm.
if they're still like, hey, I want my own printed copy, they can download a PDF and print individual pages one
Mm-hmm.
at a
Mm-hmm.
time, which is really nice feature. So they can say, "Hey, I'm going to be offline," or "I just work better on paper," or all
Right.
those kinds of things. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then like I said, the last one is physical print copies. Um, some of these ones, they basically let you print at cost, right? So it's just, so if a student wants to do it, instead of paying, $75 for a textbook or whatever else it is that they're going to get, they can pay $7 for the full print
Mm-hmm.
version of it, and then get it. And some of them even do, depending on your school or whatever else it is, could be binding or different things. So again, just really reducing the costs. There are kind of endless different ways to do them. Whether you want to go fully digital or fully paper, you have your choice.
And what are some final thoughts? Because it seems like it's a labor of love,
Yeah,
but I don't want to scare anyone. And I think you should always look for ways to make your content better. And if I just think if it's efficient,
yeah.
and why not?
Yeah, I think one thing that's great about it is when you're doing this, it makes you much stronger in the content you're teaching because you're spending real time
Mm,
interacting with it. I feel like one thing that happens with some teachers is like they get the book and they're just like, okay, well, let's just open up to page,
mm-hmm,
17, and I'll just figure it out as we're talking about it as we're going through because I know this well enough, right? And it's like, but here when you're doing these things, it's really nice because you do much deeper dives into it and you're thinking about the content that you're presenting to your
mm-hmm,
students. And so I like that because I feel like I'm getting my own deeper retraining on the grammar points before I'm
mm-hmm.
going in and
Yeah.
teaching them to my classes. So I like that a lot. But definitely it is a labor of love. You're not going to get out of it what you financially what you're putting into it time wise, right?
Mm-hmm,
But your students will, right? Like that money
mm-hmm,
is going to come back in, into the world
mm-hmm.
somehow, right? And so the
Yeah.
more you use it, for sure, it's going to be a better option for many people over time. And so a couple of things we've talked about this on so many different things when you're integrating
Mm-hmm,
tech or whatever else it is. Just start small. Do one lesson,
mm-hmm,
one activity, right? Just provide them with the materials. And if you start saying, "Hey, that worked. My students liked it. We did this activity. It didn't cost them anything," I am 100% sure that everybody who's listening to this episode has already built content that is not
mm-hmm.
made from a textbook, right? And so
Right.
so it's like you've already started making OER in certain ways, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
you're just saying, how do I organize that in a way that it could work across the entire semester, or the entire term? That is absolutely doable. And especially if you're just thinking of it in terms of like, okay, next week's lessons, what can I make and provide? And then just start saving those and organizing them. And it will be much, much less work later on.
And
Um,
just as I had a question popped up,
mhm.
you're doing this now for grammar. Have you found that you have to update content?
So no, yes and no. Grammar is pretty static,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that not totally. We have to talk to our students about that,
Mm-hmm.
but you can make you can make changes instantly. So when you go in, again, like using LibreText, if I make a change in LibreText, it will automatically update the Canvas page inside of there because it's all just pulling in as an embed for that part.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you can make instant updates. So, for example, one of the resources that I pulled, the teacher who had written the original materials talked a lot about, his life in Seattle and, his two sons as examples, right? They were pretty personal, not, not deeply personal, but personalized
Mm-hmm.
to that teacher and what the things that he probably talks about in his classes, right? And so what I did is I'm like, oh, well, I don't need those. Those are not points that are going to
Mm-hmm.
work for me. I actually ran a lot of them through AI, and I said, hey, here are the first names of many of my students. Please rotate through these, and so use my own students' names as replacements for the generic ones that you have
Mm-hmm.
inside of here. So that I did customize out for all of my students. I try to bring in cultural concepts that, so I say, like,
Right.
bring up things that are from Chinese culture or from Ukrainian
Mm-hmm.
culture or whatever else it is, right? And so that the students feel like there are points of interest and that they are recognizing themselves or their own lives
Mm-hmm.
or experiences inside of the content. And so some of
Cool.
those things are really, you can do the full customization, but I do really want to reemphasize this because I'm not as good as it as I should be, which is using other content that's already built. Just pull it on over, right? That should be your starting point. You don't need to start everything from
Mm,
scratch. You're meant to be using the shared content and using that as a way to build more and more.
very cool. We look forward to hearing about what you've done with writing in the future.
Yes, well, this will be publicly available once it's done, so
Cool.
if you want this grammar OER at the end of this semester, it will be fully completed, and so I will make sure that I share it out with everybody too.
Awesome. All right, it is time for our fun finds. And I have been playing a lot of games, sort of
Mm,
to release some anxiety. And I recently learned how to play Duroc. Have you ever
Duroc.
heard of it?
No.
Duroc.
Mm-mm.
It translates, I believe, to the fool
Okay.
in Ukrainian. It's a card game. If you're a fan of blackjack, or also like if you're bluffing, if you like bluffing games and psychological strategy type games, it's got a little bit of all those. There isn't an American game that quite matches it, and it's a lot of fun.
Mm,
So I would say go on YouTube, and I'll link one of the tutorials on how to play Duroc.
wonderful. Great. I've mentioned this show several times in the past. I think Michelle is The Last Drive-In. It's a horror host movie show, whatever. They show like kind of campy horror movies, and then the host Joe Bob Briggs comes in and talks about them. But every episode he does these like long, kind of brilliant rants. I've mentioned this before. I do want to kind of give a special shout out to one of the ones he did just this weekend, last Friday, I think on the third, I guess it was. 3rd of October 2025 was the final terror was the name of the episode. He went on this crazy rant where it was wonderful. It was totally brilliant, but he basically was talking about, essentially we're, with things like the parks shutting down and the like fish and wildlife closing down. He's like, well, all of these things, like when we shut them all down, like he went on and on and on about how it's problematic because so many of us really like and enjoy, but at the same time he was flipping it and saying, well, actually what this is it's really wonderful for this specific subgenre of horror of like hillbilly horror or or like camping in the woods horror, right? So he was saying essentially in the 60s and 70s when some of these first movies were coming out, everybody was really scared of going out into the woods, and then he's like, but the reality is once they started actually going out to Yosemite and all these places, they saw how well marked they were, how what a good job all the rangers did to clean everything up, exactly where to park, where to camp, all these different things. He said so people were like not scared of camping, and he's like, but now with all of these things closed down and nobody working in these things, they're going to be scary again. So so he's like, so good. This is really great for the subgenre of horror of, camping in the woods slash,
Mhm.
whatever those types of things are. So, it was one of the most cleverly put together rants I have ever seen. And if you have access to that show, whether it be on Shudder or AMC or something like that, it was the season 7, episode 15 of the last drive-in, and it was the final terror. It was about the first 20 minutes or so of the episode.
Very cool. All right. For the show notes and other episodes, check us out at diesel.org/127. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. And we are at Diesel Pod.
You can find me on some of the socials at Brent G. Warner.
And you can't really find me these days. But if you do, I'm somewhere at Ixie Pixie with underscores, perhaps more than one underscore. And
Yeah,
that's where I'm going to leave it.
I can email you. That's fine. That'll work.
Send a pigeon.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you for listening to the show.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Mm.